All right, hi everyone. This is for anybody who missed family paint night. I'm not gonna go through the whole process of painting, but I'll just give you a few highlights of the steps that you need to follow, and you can use your kit that you have at home. Okay, the first thing that you're gonna need is you need some extra materials that are not in your packet, such as a pencil for tracing the outline. You need a cup of water for rinsing, and you need a paper towel for drying your brush. You always want to dry your brush between colors with this kind of paint, okay? Otherwise it's going to get really watery. Also, you need something to protect your surface that you're working on. So go ahead and put some paper down, or a towel or something that you can protect your table with, and also wear clothes that you don't care about getting paint on. Okay, so in your packet, you're going to have a tracer. So I'm going to switch to my document camera. There we go. And what you want to do is put this down on your fish, down on your canvas, somewhere kind of in the middle, and then go ahead and trace around the fish. You'll have to hold down fairly hard. This is a very thin paper for a tracer, so just go ahead around the edge and trace the fish. And I'm just working really fast here, so I suggest you go a little bit slower. Okay, that will give you the outline of your fish. Then you're going to take your blue and your white paint, and you're going to dump a little bit onto a paper plate. You have one paper plate in your packet, but you might want to grab a second, if you have one at home, a second paper plate or another material that you can spread your paint out. This is the only paint you have, so you want to make sure that you use it wisely and don't just start mixing up everything, okay? The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take my largest brush, and I'm going to start with the blue, and I'm going to start outlining sections of the canvas around the fish. Okay, and so I'm just going to take that brush, keep it flat on its side, and start to outline. Now you want to work in sections. Don't do the whole entire thing at once. Start adding in that blue paint. Excuse my dog in the background. Start outlining this and filling in with the blue paint. It's okay if it's a little bit thick when you put it on. This is going to be the water, so having that little bit of texture is going to look fine. And just keep working section by section. Before you move on, I'm going to paint this all the way. And while this paint is still wet, I want you to grab a little bit of your white and just start to feather in some of the white, giving this some contrast and creating a watered effect. And you want to do this while the blue is still wet. If you do this, if you wait until the blue is totally dry, you're going to have white streaks and it won't be blended together. Okay, so once you have this section done, you're going to keep working all the way around the fish. If you need to switch your brush sizes, like especially getting in here in the mouth or around these curves, if you need to switch to a smaller brush, then you can do that. All right, so I'm going to keep painting along, getting all of this blue done and feathering in the white. Okay, so now you are finished with that, and what you need to do is go around and paint the edges blue. So you want to paint the sides of your canvas, all four sides. I'm not even going to worry about adding in that white. I'm just going to paint them blue, and you can probably do this with your canvas flat on the table. You don't need to lift it up. Okay, so make sure you get all four sides rotated around as you need to, and then I'll show you some color choices for making the fish. Okay, once you have those sides painted, the next thing I want to talk about is mixing some colors for your fish. You could do a black fish, you could do a red fish, you can do a yellow fish, but the colors of this particular paint don't mix that well. So I'm going to show you some colors that I tried that will work well. You could just do a yellow fish if you want. So you could pour a little bit of yellow on your plate and just go straight with yellow. You could do an orange fish. That works pretty well. So I'm going to put a little bit of red on here. And then you will take a brush, and you always start with the darker color and mix it into the lighter color. So I'm going to take a little bit of the red and stir it into the yellow to make my orange. Okay, and then if you need more, if you want a darker orange, then you can grab a little bit more red and stir it in. Okay, so but always start with taking the scoop of the darker color and mixing it into the lighter color. Okay, so orange, yellow. Another good choice is to do pink. If you want to do a pink fish, start with a little red, or I'm sorry, a little white, and then grab some of the red and stir it in until you get the color pink that you like. This paint, this particular brand of paint that we're using, it doesn't mix, the colors are just not that vibrant when it mixes. So I'm going to suggest that you stay away from trying to do purple. We know that blue and red make purple. Thanks, Nora. But it just doesn't come out that well with this particular paint. So I'm making a suggestion that you do yellow, orange, pink, and also you could do green, but if you want to mix a green, but we're going to be doing some plants, some seaweed and things like that out of green. So it's probably not going to be the best choice. So go ahead, and what you're going to do is you're going to make sure your brush is really well rinsed and dried. So always dry your brush on the paper towel, and then choose whichever color you want for your fish, and you're going to paint this in. This is probably going to need 2 coats of paint. Make sure you're not putting your arm down into your painting. And just like you did when you outlined with the blue, just use that flat brush. You could use the medium brush. If you need to switch to the small in certain spots, you can do that, okay? And then just go along the edge, and you're probably going to want to do 2 coats of this color on the fish, whichever color you choose. Okay, so go ahead and work on filling in your fish, and then I will show you the next step. All right, now we're going to take some white paint. Okay, so I have some on my plate here, and you can use either your medium or your large brush and just keep it nice and flat and rotate it around, and you can make some bubbles floating up from your fish. I'm going to make a couple right there. I'm putting the paint on fairly thick so I don't have to put a second coat. Okay, so if you want to do a second coat at home, you can. And I'm going to just have this one kind of going off the edge, a little semicircle, and add another one here. Now mine seem to be really similar in size. You could make some big, you can make some small. And before we move on, I want to just remind you that everyone's different and you can create your fish however you want. We had one student that did an American flag fish. We had students that did stripes on their fish, right? So they can all be different. I'm going to show you a technique of using dry brush and adding a little bit of color to the fish. But you can, like I said, you can decorate this however you want. Okay, so go ahead and make your bubbles, and then I'll show you what's. Okay, now I'm going to show you how you can add some little bits of color. You can see in my finished picture, I still have an orange fish, but I've just added a little bit of color to the tail and a little bit of contrast here. You can use what's called a dry brush technique. Okay, so choose a color. I'm going to stay with the warm color family. So I'm going to use some pink, yellow, and orange. And I'm just going to get a little bit on my brush. Okay, so I have a little bit on my brush, and I'm actually going to just dab it off a little bit on the edge of the plate. And then you just kind of feather it in like you're pushing down, and then you're just kind of lifting up with your brush when you get to the edge. Dab some of the paint off, and you're just kind of pushing down at the beginning and then lifting up right before you pull it off the canvas. Okay, and so you can go through and add those little highlights to the tail, to the different fins. And I'm just following the contour the line of these curves of the fins. So I'm just kind of following that same contour. And if you have your yellow on your plate, you can do the same, add in a little bit of yellow. It works really nice to add these warm color families. But like I said, get creative with this, okay? I want you to make this your artwork. You are the artist. You are all very unique. We're all different. And even though we're following the same instructions and painting the same kind of picture, everybody's picture is going to look different in the end. I'm also going to add just a little bit of white in here, kind of showing this is like a little bit reflective because the fish is scaly and a little shiny. And I'm going to do the same. I'm going to come in here. I'm going to add some of these same colors to the body of the fish and also on the top fin and the bottom fins. Okay, so you guys go ahead and work on that, and I'm going to pause the video. Okay, the last thing we're going to do on our fish before we let it dry and move on to something else, we're going to come back to it in a little while, but one thing we want to add is with your white, make sure your brush is really nice and clean and dried off. Okay, I'm using my medium brush, but you can use the small one if that's easier for you. You're just going to make the eye. So I'm going to make a circle, or you can make this an oval right about here. And again, we're just doing one eye because we're looking at the side of the fish. Okay, so just put one eye, and you can make this as big or small as you want. So it's up to you how creative you want to get with that. Maybe you want to make it more cartoony, more of a realistic eye. That's up to you. Okay, so once you have that white eye painted, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to make some green for our plants. So there's a lot of plants that grow in the bottom of the sea. And so we're going to make a green. And like we've talked about in class, some of these plants are going to go behind the fish. So the fish is the foreground, the front of our picture. These plants go right behind it, okay? So what you're going to do to make the green is you always start with the lighter color first. So, yep. My daughter Nora's here doing this with me. So we're sharing one paint cup. We're going to have a little more yellow than this. Okay, good. That's okay. All right, so we are going to take some yellow and dump that out on your plate. And you will have enough. We're just sharing. Okay, and then you're also going to take some of the blue and do this to the side of your canvas. I'm just holding it here so you can see. Okay, and you're going to take the blue because that's the darker color. So you're going to take the blue and you're going to stir it into the yellow. And you're probably going to end up with like a yellow green to start. And then you need to add a little more blue till you get to the desired green that you want, okay? So you just keep stirring in some green, or I'm sorry, some blue until you get the green color that you like, okay? And then, I got a little drop here, take that off. The nice thing about working with acrylic, I know it's messy and it's harder to clean up, but if you have something that you aren't happy with and you want to paint over it, once it dries, it's hard like a plastic, so you can do that. I'm going to start, move this up just a little bit, at the bottom of my canvas. I'm actually going to use my small brush for this, and I'm going to just create those organic shapes of the plants. Now remember, we want these to look like they're floating in the water. They're growing up into the water right behind the fish, and you can add as many as you want, but I want you to see if you can try at least to imagine this is behind the fish and then kind of popping out above. So, and Nora has green hands. Okay, so you're going to put in a few plants, okay? And while, I'm just gonna do 2 to start. And while this is wet, okay, so just like we did with the white on the water, while this is still wet, I'm actually gonna just grab some yellow and kind of blend that in a little bit, okay? That's making this have a little bit of contrast, so it's not just that dark green. And you can also add in a little bit of the white if you want to go back in and add some white and just blend that in as well, kind of brighten that up, show that reflective quality of the plants in the water. And then go ahead and add in a few more pieces, okay? And then we're going to switch to our black paint. So go ahead and add a few more pieces of seaweed while you're doing that, okay? Okay, so now we're gonna switch to our black paint, and you're gonna use the fine brush, the what's called the liner brush, so the skinny one. And I'm just gonna show you a few things, but you're gonna be able to just finish up these details how you want. Okay, I'm gonna first take this black, and we're kind of doing these bubbles opposite. Normally we would show a reflection line with white, but since we painted them white, you can take the black and you can make a little curved line showing that they're reflective. And then you can take some black, and you don't have to outline your entire fish, but if you want to, you can use the black, or you could go in with a darker color that you have and add in some of the definition between the fins. Okay, so I'm just going to add some in, and you can outline your fish if that's the look that you like. I don't think it needs to be outlined completely. I'm going to add in just some contrast here, showing this movement and the curvature of these beautiful angelfish fins. And so I'm pressing a little bit too hard. When you do this, you might want to just press really lightly with your liner brush. You could also add in a curved line, defining the difference between this fin and the fish. And then you can also do that here. And you can also do that up on the top. Just kind of defining that that fin is actually coming off on top of the fish. So you can add as much of these sort of defining lines that you think work well for your picture. And then I'm going to show you 2 more things that we're going to do with the black, and then you can continue to work, and we'd love to see pictures. So if you have some pictures of your finished product, you can send them to us. I'm going to use this black paint to add in the gills. I'm going to start with a longer line first that's curving up. And then I'm going to make a few more that are going to get smaller as I go back. So here's the medium one, and here's small. You can even add a little tiny one if you want to. And then we need to add in, you know what, I'm actually going to add in a little bit of black, and you might need to rotate your canvas around. I'm going to add in a little black by the mouth, and then you want to add in your eye details. So you can add in a large or small center to your eye. If you want your eye to have, my white is still wet, so you might want to wait till yours is dry. You might want to add some small eyelashes if that's something that's interesting to you. And then I'm also going to use my black to add a contrasting type of plant. I'm just going to do a curved line. And again, this is going behind the fish and kind of popping out above. I'm going to add in a few of those. You can add some shorter ones if you want. And there are so many different types of plants, especially if you think about like the coral reefs. There's so many different types of plants in the ocean. And so think about how you can get really creative with this. You could even add some flowers if you wanted to add some flowers. But I'm just going to keep this simple for our video and then you get creative, okay? So the next thing I'm going to do before I finish is on these kind of long tentacle-like vines I just put in, I'm actually going to take my medium brush. I'm going to get some green paint and I'm just going to dab. Just push down and dab. And make some leaves coming off of these. And you don't have to just stick with green. Again, you could do some contrasting colors on that. I'm going to add some green. You could add white. You could put some yellow on there. I'm going to see if I have any yellow left here. Put it over. I'm going to add a little bit of yellow. Put a little bit of contrast in there. And I'm just pushing down the brush. Okay, I'm not pushing down really hard, just kind of medium, and making some marks on here. And then if you want to, you could rinse your brush and add a little bit of white, just like we did on the other plants. So if you want to add some white, really make these pop out. And then the last thing you're going to do is sign your artwork. So you will probably need to wait for this to dry completely. You can sign your artwork down in the bottom corner, the left or the right corner, whichever you prefer. If you want to try and do it with your paintbrush, you can. You want to keep it small. Don't make your name really huge. When I sign my artwork, I actually just use my initials. So in the bottom corner, I'm going to use that liner brush and some paint. Now that's more difficult to do than if you're just doing this with a Sharpie. If you want to wait, you can do it with a Sharpie or pencil and wait for your paint to dry. Okay, so here is the finished look. Here's another version, okay? And I hope you guys have a great time. And I know my students are so creative. I know that you're going to come up with some really interesting paintings, so send me some pictures. Okay, have fun.